So like a lot of what we realize with the decision making is that it like kind of happens in a few different ways. Either way, it's very fragmented. And so you have either a few people in a small room having conversations about, maybe what the rest of their DAO wants, or if they're not even a DAO and it's not governance, what their users want. And so they don't have the chance to really get a collective idea of a direction to go before they start, and then they start spending money, right? And so what we're trying to do is help them gather feedback before they have to make a first step.
Welcome to Trailblazers. Today I'm here with Dirt and Matt from Future DAO. Can you guys kind of start by introducing yourselves and kind of telling us your paths that led you to Future DAO in the first place?
Matt, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Like a lot of us, I dabbled in crypto in the early days, back in 2017 and all. Didn't take over my life until about 2020, when I was doing my PhD in future studies. And I fell into the Web3 world and DAO governance. And, pretty quickly, it all made sense to me. I started off with Decentraland. The idea of virtual real estate and that type of thing made a lot of sense since I grew up on MMORPGs. Had owned houses in the virtual world and was selling gold on eBay back in the day when I was 13 and making real world money. So it all made sense. But being in political science and future studies, I was drawn towards the DAO world and fell in pretty quickly with Decentraland DAO. And really realized that there was a lot happening here in the governance space, but everyone was going about it either from like technical perspectives or financial. There really wasn't much social, cultural, political type of thought going into the day-to-day governments. So worked for 2 years, 2 years plus with Decentraland DAO as a DAO facilitator. Started their DAO facilitation team, grew that team to about 5. And during that time, co-created something called Big Green DAO with Kimball Musk, Elon's brother, and we onboarded over 100 nonprofit organizations in the food justice and security sector into a DAO. Raised about $6 million and decentralized control over that money. We built it on ETH and Polygon, and it was a really great experiment that's still going. And came into the Solana ecosystem more recently, something like 9 months ago, and love the governance space here. It's really nascent, but a lot of good thinkers and builders going into it. So excited now to be building on the governance side here.
It's very cool.
Yeah, mine's kind of a little more funny. It's not quite as wholesome experience. I was like Matt, pretty early to investing in crypto in like 2017. Honestly, didn't get involved as like a builder or a member till I guess early 2023 after FTX just sort of kneecapped, and I was like, well, time to get serious, put on the big boy pants, and make a Twitter profile account. And so I went from doing research kind of reports, and then I decided last year to actually start a podcast. And it was around the same time last summer that I was just saw what was going on in Solana. It's just like, this is sort of where it has to be. And became a lot more involved in that space and reaching out to people. And then, found my way to Mountain DAO and just kind of kept meeting people and was kind of really eager to sort of participate, in an ecosystem on a team. And then it just so happened by random chance that Matt and I and a few others were sort of roped into this community takeover of a meme coin. And that's so Murdered became Future on a hostile takeover. And sort of what kind of initially began as just like this little hype momentum experiment over the last like 8 months just merged sort of and pivoted from product to product and landed with us being on Future DAO and trying to change the broken governance flywheel. So yeah, it's been very interesting.
Can you guys kind of share a little bit about like the pivots that you've been going through over the past 8 months and kind of how you've landed to where you kind of are now?
Yeah, I'll start, Matt.
Take that, Dirt. I feel like that's on you.
I'll start, and then you take over because it's literally you're the reason we are where we are now. But yeah, so when we did the initial community takeover, it was a pretty hot narrative. Community takeovers happening after meme coins had rugged, and so we were a direct result of bad devs doing nefarious actions. And so our initial idea was, what, let's evangelize, let's make a token migrator so that communities like ours that get destroyed have an outlet to start again. And so we ended up working with the team and we built this sweet migrator that actually still works, and we're going to end up open sourcing it. But kind of the harsh realization was that relying on people to want to save something that has died is a fruitless endeavor, and you end up spinning a lot of wheels and talking to a lot of people that just don't have an interest in it. And so it took us kind of a few months to realize that we built a product that doesn't have a market fit. And so Matt and I, chatting along the way, realized that what he was working on is a perfect implementation for where we are as a DAO. And so Matt, why don't you jump into that?
Yeah, and I think one piece you missed that was really pivotal in our emergence from this community takeover was our linking up with MetaDAO and deciding during the takeover process that we're going to link up and be a futurarchy DAO, and really be on the cutting edge of governance as a whole and governance in general. And that's what really roped me into the community, was this, working on this edge case governance tool that was gaining more and more popularity and use, and to be able to integrate that into our meme coin governance. And part of futurarchy is it's a certain way of trading your votes. But what I work on is group decision making in digital democracy. As also my job, I'm CEO of a company called Othello. And so by the time you get to voting in a lot of places, some of the key decisions have been made. So I started using the tool that I have as part of my company within our governance process, for pre-proposal development, for getting feedback from the community and how to design our proposals. And all along the way, I was like, hey guys, this is really relevant across the ecosystem. And I think what came from our community takeover was this belief and understanding that the real value of a project is in its community, is in its culture, and that's really at our ethos. So whether we're doing a token migration tool or a governance tool, like, we're oriented towards the voice of the community, the power of the people, both in terms of amplifying that voice and amplifying that power, as well as making that voice as, coherent as possible to decision makers in these projects. And that's where our, governance tool came along. We started focusing on, pre-governance, or soft governance, but mainly pre-governance and proposal development, and getting people involved in the proposal development process before the key decisions have already been made and we're voting. So we pivoted, and we started to make the pivot right around the Coliseum Radar Hackathon, and we just saw that, and we just went full on and brought together a team for the hackathon, and built a Solana port, blockchain native tool of this traditional Web 2 company I've been working with that's been doing digital democracy for 12 years now. And so that was kind of our journey from.
And I'll add on to that too. Sorry, Jack. Just credit where credit's due. As this all kind of happened when I was at Mountain DAO, and I had been there earlier this year, so it was kind of a round two for me. And Matt and I working on these things real time, as a path forward, and being able to knock boots with like Jack, yourself, and all the chads over at Mountain DAO was so helpful for being able to flesh out this product idea. And I just want to give a shout out to those lads for really helping us at an instrumental time.
Yeah, in real life events, it's amazing how much iteration you can kind of get done in a short period of time. Can you guys kind of talk a little bit about the features of your product and how that kind of solves the problems that you guys were seeing in like current on-chain governance?
Totally. Matt, maybe I'll start with sort of like the insight rails and just like distribution for how we want to get it across. And then you can talk about like the power of the decision making, and then kind of as it leads into Pulse. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds
Cool.
great.
So like a lot of what we realized with the decision making is that it like kind of happens in a few different ways. Either way, it's very fragmented. And so you have either a few people in a small room having conversations about, maybe what the rest of their DAO wants, or if they're not even a DAO and it's not governance, what their users want. And so they don't have the chance to really get a collective idea of a direction to go before they start, and then they start spending money, right? And so what we're trying to do is help them gather feedback before they have to make a first step. And how we want to do that, and how we want to help fix it, is by virtue of how we actually distribute the tool. And so the decision-making engine that Matt can talk about, which is powered through our API, which we're working on and should be done in the next 2 weeks, our plan is to be able to give that wherever your users are, wherever your community is, whether that's a Telegram bot, Discord widget, a React Native pop-up on your website, or wrapped into blinks on the timeline. Our idea is that we can put this feedback solution, decision-making engine, wherever anybody is. If they want to incentivize their users to use it, they can do that. If they want to token gate it, they can token gate it. Or if they want to collect data from whether you're a token holder or an NFT holder or you're not, they can do that. And so that's sort of our idea, is just to put it in front of everybody at all times and make it as frictionless as possible to interact with.
Yeah, and at the core of it, we're using something called the Othello engine. And Othello is a digital democracy company that's been working with technology to enable community engagement and digital governance, before blockchain. It's been 12 years now. And Othello works with local governments at the city level, some federal entities, nonprofit organizations, and it's a really powerful tool. And at its root is what's called an engine that does multi-criteria decision analysis. So what it does is it just takes a set number of topics, a set number of options within those topics, and then evaluation criteria, let's say efficiency, effectiveness, impact, and it lets you rate everything as a whole together. And then it produces an outcome that measures for not only traditional metrics like approval, which is, the amount of people that voted favorable for something, or support, which is a weighted average, but it measures for consensus and conflict. So it runs scenarios on this, and it finds the solution out of all these different options. Basically, the options are what you're voting on, and it finds a solution that has the highest amount of consensus and the least amount of conflict. And it's a different type of voting metric. And you can still see the traditional metrics, and it gets even more powerful when you enter in constraints. So you can enter in constraints like budget or time, or 2 solutions or 5 solutions, and it basically just runs millions of scenarios in real time based on these metrics, and you can choose which one you evaluate for. So you get a different layer of depth, and the experience itself of voting or participating, it feels very embodied. It feels like you're part of the process. And we found great success using it with cities and running budgets and things like that. Something like 80%, 76 to 80% of polled participants who used this engine, support decisions that come out of it because they feel like it's a different type of decision making. So it's A, both build buy-in, and B, it also empowers people's voice to really find these decisions before you get to the point of voting, which is either a lot of times a rubber stamp or an implosion, right? Like decoherence. Like we either rubber stamp a proposal or like fails in a ball of blazing glory, and we have to kind of pick up the pieces. So by using this powerful tool, putting this new blockchain AI technology on top of it, we're really trying to prevent that. And not it's not for me, and I don't want to I don't know if this is provocative or not, but I don't believe the narrative that governance is broken. I think it's just really hard. It's really difficult. And that's why we're here, to give a tool that makes it easier, to give time back to community members, to give time back to project builders, and really make the time that we put in valuable and the decisions and outcomes really trusted. And that's kind of.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And it's cool too, Jack, because if we're able to make this impactful, and our job and our ethos is compatibility, composability, and it seems to be like Solana's very like that across the board. So we want to integrate with all of the current governance solutions, people like MetaDAO, Realms, the guys over at Align, and be able to be sort of something they don't have yet. This sort of pre-governance, this early decision making. And if that can work and we can integrate with DAOs and get this to them, then this is sort of what comes out the other side is what we're kind of calling a pulse. Because if we can give them an insight, and let's just say, for instance, you could standardize it and you could give it to all the NFT communities that you say whitelisted to get an idea for like, what does the community feel about this entity? You know, how do they feel about their treasury management? How do they feel about their branding? How do they feel about communication, team? Like all of these things are live. And so you can kind of get buy-in from, say, Monkey DAO and say, you know, get your users to fill this out. And that data becomes live on our pulse. And that data is very powerful because it's the first time that you're able to sort of take something that's very like intangible and put sort of a weighted score and a metric to it. And you kind of begin to be able, like, so you're applying analytics, right? Like you do blockchain analytics, you see what's on chain. If you've ever done research, it's hard to understand a community. And whether you're looking at it from like an investment perspective or from a management perspective, trying to understand a massive community is extremely difficult. You go into a Discord or a Telegram group, it's a lot of the time just noise. And maybe sometimes their most valuable users aren't even representative in there because they're not being vocal. Or it's hard to guarantee if all the people that are raising their voice are even shareholders. And so this pulse idea allows an entity like Monkey DAO to say, you know, we want to privatize this information because it helps us run a better DAO. Or maybe we want to monetize this and we want to share it publicly and have an opportunity for the first time to receive money back from data about your community. And so this sort of insights flywheel that we hope to create can power this pulse sort of the first time and give data where it was not able to find before. And like we'll be able to play with like, you know, how does that look like from a monetization perspective? You know, you have to be aware of people's privacy rights, but with the blockchain and the way things work is you're not really releasing details about individual people. You're just able to say, do they hold this NFT and this NFT and this NFT? Are they Matrica verified? Do they have a Solana ID? And you start to kind of get these layers of power users and all this information. We're pretty excited about what that can look like.
Yeah, that does sound really exciting. I think like I've been paying attention to governance in crypto now for like the past 3 years, and one problem that I've always seen come up is voter apathy. And I think like I would love to hear kind of how you guys think about like how this tool can kind of remove some of that apathy and actually get people to say what they think.
Yeah, and I think that's like the big elephant in the room too. Is like, well, you're building a tool that needs participation, and participation is one of the biggest problems that all these DAOs are happening. All these DAOs are having. And what I'll say about that is, the type of participation that the tool enables feels different, and the results are real time. It's not like you go to a form and you fill out some survey questions and then it says thank you for your submission. You know, you may hear from us again in 6 months or see a proposal. Like the results happen in real time, and you can see where your votes are relative to other people, and you can see where the distribution of votes are across the community. So it really takes what kind of feels like a benign experience, and it gives it more of an embodied feel. And I think that's one thing that can really increase participation is you feel like your vote matters. And the other is, you know, what Dirt was saying earlier about hitting the users where they are. You know, right now in a governance process, you know, users chime in mid-vote to say, I don't like this proposal, and they miss the entire proposal development period, and they have like a really good feedback point that could have changed everything. And then the community gets mad, like, where the hell were you in the past month when we were talking about this? So like, oh, well, I was on Twitter, you guys are on Discord, or, you know, I was in Telegram, you guys are on Twitter. We're trying to hit people where they are. So we're going to have channels for Discord, Telegram, Twitter blinks, and it's all going to come back into a base insight that you can also do it all there too and feed into the results dashboard, which shows you where your community is. So I think that's a big point, is bringing people together in one place from many different places. and bringing them in at the right time in the process, because governance isn't voting. And the second thing is, or fifth thing, I don't know where I'm at, is, I think there's a lot of DAO power users. We care about governance. I care about what's happening in Monkey DAO. I care about what's happening in with Align and Dean's List. I care about all these things. But right now, I don't have enough bandwidth to participate or even follow what's happening or share my feedback. I think that you'll get like 10 users in one DAO, and they'll be participating in their insights, and they'll see something interesting happening in another DAO, and they'll share their insights. And you'll be able to see that someone from Monkey DAO gave their insights on this, and this is how Monkey DAO feels about your governance process. So we start to create some cross-pollination in ways that we didn't have before, because everything's on-chain or hybrid on-chain and token-gated. So I think that will make it feel like there's more participation in general. And that builds more participation. Participation begets participation. So I think it builds the space up as a whole, which will then increase participation.
And you lead to an interesting point too about participation. Like everybody goes to Jupiter to cast votes because it's very valuable for you to cast your votes to Jupiter because you're rewarded. So I think long term, having to incentivize participants to turn out to vote isn't really a winning method. It's going to happen, and I applaud it for happening. And one of the things we want to be able to do is lottery-based incentivization. So it's you can show up to vote, and you might get some tokens. You're not guaranteed to, but maybe you'll roll the dice and you'll get $100 worth of bonk or something. If they're game to play ball with that type of method. But what Matt was sort of talking about, I really liked, is ideas for profiles. I myself have several NFTs and a part of a bunch of communities, but you have to kind of pick and choose who you're a part of. If Insights as a platform is the place where proposal development happens, where brand direction happens, where all these things happen for these whitelisted DAOs and spaces, I myself have an opportunity to become a power user in that space. My profile is not going to list my full name, but maybe my profile shows the NFTs that I own in my wallet and the communities that I'm a part of and the tokens that I'm a part of. And so when I start to cast votes and have a say, there can be more weight given to that. And so then people might be more incentivized to climb a leaderboard of I'm an actual power user and I actually give a shit and I have something good to say. Because maybe what's on the other side of that is a new community comes up and they don't have a big following. They don't have this big, blue chip NFT, but they still want reliable feedback. So they could come to us and say, who are your top 100 or top 1,000 feedback providers that are a part of whatever communities? Can we incentivize them directly to give feedback on our information? And I think that becomes more powerful, even if it's whether it's incentivization or it's whatever it is, a whitelist for beta access to their project. So I think there's a good opportunity there to make use of it.
Yeah, I guess what immediately stands out to me is that participation is a lot more, or this allows a much more nuanced way of participation rather than just being yes, I'm agreeing with what's going on, or no, I don't agree with what's going on. It really allows people to share what they're thinking, which seems very valuable and something that has not necessarily occurred to me. Looking at the on-chain data, to me, it's voting is governance. You know what I mean? So it's very cool that you guys are doing this. And I guess one thing I was thinking is how does the AI work at compressing all this information that people kind of give to it and giving it to people so they can actually put out proposals or make decisions?
So it's kind of two-part, and the AI component is sort of what we'll be working on, let's say 4 weeks from now. The general idea is that, you put out an insight, you can call it a survey to understand it more simply, even though you've learned that it's much more than that. It's not always going to have everything that you feel, especially if it's trying to get feedback from a community on brand identity or product creation. So as a user, you might have more you want to say. So you have a comment box and you can drop your comment in there. And then 1,000 people drop those comments. What AI can do is look at those 1,000 comments and summarize an overwhelming majority of users feel that the color orange is best representative of the product direction. And that's at a very baseline. And so what that does is it stops a team member from having to keep all his eyes on Discord and Telegram channels at all times to parse what he thinks his community wants is sort of a capture all. And so, I'm not an AI master. And so in terms of compression, like I've reached out to a couple of people that have advised me, and that method of using AI is not a large ask. And so then the other component, which I think is sort of compelling for the AI side, is we talk about governance. We talk about what is a perfect DAO, how does it work, and in an ideal situation, it's not like one or two people doing something. You want to operate in a trustless society, and so if we're actually in the pre-governance realm, and MetaDAO or a Futarchy wants to write a proposal, and you have a professional proposal writer, and he's decided to do some market research by drafting up an insight. Out of that insight, which would be very complex, an AI could create a proposal for you. So it could draft a proposal based on the feedback saying a budget approved of this much by an overwhelming amount of majority community members for this direction to do this and execute on this. Now that would have to go somewhere as a draft, and a DAO or a multi-sig would look at that and make the edits. But it's like you kind of get one step closer to this like trustless ability to create proposals that aren't reliant on a few people sitting in a room writing it up.
Yeah. Can you? Yeah, I guess that totally makes sense, and it really isn't that. It's probably trivial to like throw some like API for like Claude or something onto it and kind of just get a quick kind of summary of what's going on. Can you guys kind of talk a little bit about like the headwinds and the tailwinds you kind of see for like making this like a big success in like the governance space?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I think the tailwinds are fairly obvious in regards to like MetaDAO's had a lot of success recently in shaking up the governance landscape, and it's opened the doors to a lot of conversation around like how do we ratify results. It's also like you have teams like Realms who are like completely redoing their governance platform, and then the guys like Phase Labs with the Line trying to work on their soft governance landscape. So I feel like right now is a really good time to be sort of in this let's shake up governance zone. And because we feel like we have something that's kind of novel and new, it allows us to, we're not competing with those entities. We want to help them make their products better, right? And so I think in terms of a tailwind, we're able to play friendly with everybody. Even when we have a conversation with a vendor because we need to work with them to help make our product better, the beauty of Solana, plug and play. But we're at the end of that being like, well, you have a business and you want to know what your users want. Like, how can we help you get results better? So I think if the product comes out and people like it and we can prove, and okay, so here's a bit of a headwind. The biggest thing that is the headwind against like that success is if people don't want to use the product. They're not comfortable with the Discord widget. They're not comfortable with the Telegram bot. Maybe Blinks as the integration for the Twitter timeline is constrained because you can't get the full weight of the decision-making engine on there, and maybe you can only get surveys on Twitter. So I think in terms of headwinds, it's are we able to meet the users where they are and have them want to give feedback? That's sort of the way that I see it. Matt, you got anything you want to throw down there?
Yeah. I mean, I think really pushing us forward too is the real world legitimacy of the tool and the network that it's a part of. There's people building around this and have used this at the highest levels of policy making. And, the idea is that, we're a part of this broader ecosystem that's working on governance, not only on Solana, but not only in Web3, but at the world at large and across very impactful sectors, and looking to use technology like this and other technology to, mobilize knowledge in new ways, raise funds for social impact financing in new ways, and really, not to use this word, but democratize different industries and sectors. And we're a part of that. And we're in Web3, which gives us a lot of ability to be a skunkworks, to test things out and to push things forward and cycle back up and pull back down. So I think that's something that's very different for us is we are, Web3 native, blockchain native, but we're also deeply enmeshed in Web2 in different ways, and through me and my company, and this, we're part of a cooperative structure that's growing, that has former politicians and, all these impact players in it, and they're all really interested in Web3 and what this has to offer. So I don't want to be that person to say that, we want to be a bridge between Web2 and Web3, because that's not at all what I want to do. I want to create sort of more enmeshment and work in Web2 and real life when it's possible, and really show what we can do in Web3 to empower these communities. So being successful on Solana is a first step for us, being more successful as part of an ecosystem of governance change makers. So I think that's really propelling us. I think, and this is one of the great things about working with Dirt, is, complexity is something it's a headwind, a challenge. And so, this has been something that, Dirt is amazing at taking this product and breaking it down, taking this process and breaking it down to something that's very digestible and simplified. And by doing that, I think, we have a chance to really achieve much more use. And that's something that's been challenging with this product before, because it's a very complicated engine and process. And if I could show you, if you see the Web2 platform, like, it's got a behemoth of an administrative structure, but we simplified it. And we took what was the most powerful part of it and we brought it to Solana. And that's what's really exciting, is just working at the core of this technology in a place where we can really experiment and people are eager to try new things. So it's like the winds are all blowing in different directions together. It's more like a tornado rather than headwind and tailwinds.
Well said, Matt.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how people kind of start using this tool. Zooming out a little bit, you guys definitely are heads down kind of working on this thing, but what kind of things have you excited in the broader crypto ecosystem, not necessarily what you're working on?
It's interesting. So it was only sort of this year that I really started to get involved in NFT communities and DAOs and places like that, even Super Team, shout out. I'm super intrigued by this experiment that we have, where it's collective growth, where you join Monkey DAO or you join Lucid Drakes, and there's all these people that are working together, and it's such an open and explorative growth field. And you have NFTs that are making venture syndicates, so you can invest together. You're doing in real life events, people are planning build houses from within NFT communities, the Deansless guys. And so I think honestly, the thing that has me most excited isn't necessarily what sector that I want to invest in, is it's the onslaught of people out there continually pushing the limits together, and how fast that is picking up for Solana at a global pace. And that's got me just incredibly bullish.
Yeah, I mean, I think mine's kind of similar. I'm really excited to see, and I don't know if this is new or if it's new for me, but a lot of real life communities growing now out of the blockchain. I feel like we were all really behind our computers for a long time, behind our PFPs, and I don't know if it's Solana in particular or just the point I'm at, but I'm, Super Teams Canada has all these hubs, and or Super Teams does, and I've started integrating in Super Teams Canada, and it's nice to feel a different type of community and bringing it back into the virtual space and bringing the virtual space into the real world space. And I feel like because of the size of Solana, we're actually at we're at a perfect size right now to really take advantage of IRL and distributed. We're not too big, we're not too small. We're at a really interesting growth point, and that's really exciting for me because I'm interested to see what comes out of it, and the type of communities that come together. And I think that's kind of essential for scale, is really not fully breaking anonymity or pseudonymity, but leaning out from behind the screen more and more and bringing this into the real world so people can see what we're doing, what we're building, and we can sort of bring them into it. It's a little less scary when you have a face and a person to be a part of it if you've never done this before.
Yeah, it is really crazy, like what can get done when it's not just a video game, when people are meeting up and like turning it into real life. Well, I think that's kind of a great way to wrap things up. Thank you guys for coming on and sharing what you're working on.
Appreciate you, Jack. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity and interesting conversation.
Appreciate Pine Analytics too, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.